It is Chelsea tomorrow. A very, very difficult test. It feels like I've kind of been putting this off a little bit because Chelsea are a tactical nightmare. They play with wing backs. We obviously were caused a fair few problems from Brighton and their system on Wednesday, and it will be more so in terms of quality against Chelsea. Now, I think we're fortunate to a degree, and I say that very dubiously because Kante's out, Kovacic is out, and I look at that midfield two of Chelsea's. When you look at Jorginho and the number 8, not having Kante for me gives West Ham opportunities because I don't feel that Chelsea's counter press is going to be as effective. But of course, naturally, that depends on who Thomas Tuchel will play up front for Chelsea. In terms of their team and what I expect to see from them, I think obviously Mendy in goal, the back three. We'll talk about the back three and in particular what Michail Antonio can hopefully do. And fingers crossed, we've discussed fatigue, we've discussed form, but what I would like to see from him in particular, you're probably looking at Rudiger, Christensen. They could play Mangala Sarr, they could play Chalobah, has played there a few times as well. Jorginho and Ruben Loftus-Cheek, I feel, in that midfield too, as we've discussed. Wing backs, Reece James and Alonso has to pick himself really due to the injury to Chilwell. And the front three, Lukaku's fit, big problem. Big problem. Maybe more so in terms of the personnel rather than how Chelsea can hurt us. I feel that they haven't quite mastered that fluidity that they really want, and that may benefit West Ham, touch wood. And then, of course, they'll play Pulisic. They could play, I think they played Hudson-Odoi, Mason Mount, Havertz. So there is a lot of options for Chelsea to present to West Ham tomorrow. In terms of West Ham, onto more important things, I think we stick with 4-2-3-1 in principle. I think it gives us numbers in terms of the transition. I would I could understand playing wing backs. I could, but I feel that by doing that and taking away a midfield player, which is essentially what we would be doing, we would be losing a player in which to hurt Chelsea. I think we'd be sitting in much of a deeper block, if I'm honest. And then I think the game plan becomes predictable. Not that, I mean, Chelsea will be expecting West Ham to relinquish possession and counter, but from deeper areas, they'll squeeze their centre backs higher. They'll squeeze. Jorginho will be allowed freedom if that's the way that West Ham are going to play. And that's the thing. That's the risk and reward in this game. And for me, Jorginho, if Tuchel wants to press him a little bit higher and West Ham give up a lot of the ball, then there is opportunities, particularly from the likes of Declan Rice. It's a huge test for our fullbacks, in truth. And I think Soufal and Johnson, it's fair to say, will play. And in particular, Johnson versus Reece James. We know Chelsea's creativity largely comes from the wing-backs. We know the positions that Alonso and whoever plays on that left-hand side picks up. They become almost another attacking option. They're part of that overload. And if West Ham are going to stick with the back four, it does present some issues in that sense. You look at Soufal going and try and press and win the ball off Alonso. I think Soufal looked very good against Brighton, if I'm honest, and it isn't really in terms of a question mark over him defensively. It's just in terms of whether if Chelsea, particularly from their right, can get delivery into the box and Lukaku's present and there are attacking players in and around him, it could cause West Ham problems. And again, you look at the two centre-backs, can they deal with that sheer number in terms of the overload? And I think we'll see Dawson and I think we'll see Zuma obviously come in. Look, there is a question mark as to whether Dawson should be in the side. Really disappointed actually for the defending against Brighton. Diop's a greater option because of the comfortability that's going to give Zuma. To be honest, I think in this game we are going to be sitting slightly deeper and therefore I have less concerns about Craig Dawson, but tentative he was in terms of dealing with the aerial duels. He absolutely has to. The problems will be if he's drawn into slightly deeper areas, in areas that he's not used to. He's too aggressive and he's trying to man mark and win the ball off Lukaku, and we know how good he is in terms of his hold-up play, then we have an issue because then space will present itself. And Zuma, and again, with the wing-backs pressed high for Chelsea, it will stretch the back four too much. So with that being said, there is a huge role and responsibility for me on our defensive midfielders in Declan Rice and Thomas Souček. And the spaces between, again, themselves and the defence have to be incredibly small. We can't allow for pockets of space. I think Tuchel will throw a spanner in the works in terms of how his forward men work, in particular if it's a Havertz or a Mason Mount. He'll employ them to go and find those spaces and try and drag Souček and Rice out of position and then invite the challenge from a Dawson or a Zuma. And that's how I feel that they're going to try it and break us down. So discipline's important. I think as we go on further into the game, depending on how West Ham can mitigate and possibly keep it to 0-0, I think there is opportunities for Declan Rice in terms of that transition from defence to attack, and we'll get into that. The attacking midfielders. There's big question marks, I feel. Obviously, the game before last, people spoke about Fornals' form. Ben Rama's form was flagged on Wednesday. Bowen's lack of effectiveness in terms of finishing. They're problematic from that sense. And I will talk about us and how we have to improve in an attacking sense against the Chelsea team that so used to play in a higher line and play with a back three that are all very comfortable, aggressive, mobile, good in possession. It's a bit of a problem. I think Fornals plays on the left. I feel that he's so crucial to protecting Ben Johnson, allowing Ben Johnson to keep his shape, allowing Ben Johnson, in fact, to try and deal with that space between the centre-backs that the likes of Mason Mount and Havertz will try and find. And it will stop Declan and Souček being stretched as much. So Fornals' role defensively is hugely important, and he's an option for West Ham to use in terms of going and pressing against Reece James and stopping the deliveries into the box. That is really key down that left-hand side, not just positionally for Ben, but also for Fornals and the entirety of the team, stopping Chelsea's overload or stopping them getting joy from it. The right-hand side, it's Jared. It's obviously Jared. Jared impressed me at times against Brighton. His finishing, yes, was poor, but I feel that in terms of ball carrying as an outlet, in terms of taking on players, enticing them into the challenge and creating space, he's going to be crucial. I actually think because of Mickey's drop in form, and from what I can tell, fatigue, that Jared Bowen's intensity and 1v1 ability is going to come into play here because he's going to have to stretch that back three. And West Ham in this game are going to have to commit the attacking midfielders forward. There's no way of getting around it with Chelsea. And you cannot afford against Chelsea to sit deep for the full 90 minutes. The quality is genuinely there. We saw what happened with Brighton. And again, allowing them to get into possession, allowing them to create with the creators that they have. I spoke about Jorginho playing slightly higher. Again, there are more and more issues that will mount up. So that's why it is important for West Ham to be proactive in the counter and in those transitional moments. Lanzini has to play. Listen, I'm a big fan of Ben Rama. I've espoused enough lyrical on him in terms of how good he has been, particularly during the start of the season. His movement's been better. He's driving in midfield. The reason why he comes out, and it's not purely just because of form, because he has been lacking in terms of end product, and that's been frustrating as well, is because Manuel Lanzini is now genuinely offering something in build-up play. He's also offering something in transition. Now, West Ham have to be clinical in these moments, and in particular in the centre of the park, because whilst Chelsea have possibly an overload or at least strengths in wide areas, definitely in central areas with the likes of Lukaku, and they're problematic in our final third, we have to realise that Jorginho and Ruben Loftus-Cheek are relying on their ability to keep the ball. And if there is a breakdown in play, West Ham have got an opportunity with Souček, Rice, and Manu Lanzini. And Manu's role in dropping deep and picking up the ball and A, taking pressure off our defence, but B, setting the attacks and allowing the attacking midfielders to get further forward. Because at times in this game, we are going to be pinned back with Fornals and with Jared Bowen. And we have to have a player in there. If Michail Antonio, at the minute, is just simply not holding the ball up well enough to allow that opportunity. And if we can do that effectively enough, there will be opportunities, I feel, for Declan to progress the ball in a counter. I can't see Souček, if I'm honest, being the player to do that because I don't think we're going to have possession enough to allow him to get further forward. I feel that done correctly, done efficiently, we could create a four-man overload against Chelsea's back three. It's a big it, but you've got to be composed in possession. We have to keep the ball long enough, and that primarily comes through Manu. And then, of course, it comes down to Michail Antonio. And listen, Mickey for me has a pass generally, because even when he's not scoring, I think he's been more clutch this season in terms of the moments that he's taken. And even when he's not been on fully fit or even in full flight, because of the runs that he makes, because of how he occupies the centre backs, because of the movement in beyond, because of the hold up play. We've built a system around that. Mickey, if he can't compete, and again, there's a wider issue in terms of how West Ham are building out from the back and distributing into Antonio. If he cannot hold the ball up, and I guarantee you that there are fantastic aerial dual winners in a Christensen, in a Rudiger, he has to be intelligent in the movement that he has. Because Michail Antonio in this game, for me, won't press. I actually think Moyes has tried to conserve his pressing ability. I think West Ham will be 4-5-1 out of possession. You'll have a three-man midfield, essentially, at times. And then the opportunity to counter from that. And Mickey will be a man off that to stretch Chelsea a bit more. That only works if A, he can stretch them and Manu can keep the ball well enough, or B, that he holds the ball up well enough himself for West Ham to transition effectively. That is the role that Michail Antonio has to do. He doesn't necessarily have to score for me. He doesn't necessarily have to have the best game that he's had for West Ham. I'm not even really convinced that Moyes is going to play him. I mean, he's the only, obviously, he's our only number 9, but at the same time, he's played 2 games back to back. I'm slightly concerned going into this fixture, his energy levels. If he is going to play, I've just got to see intensity. I've just got to see intelligent movement, and he can do that. He really can. We need that against that back 3, otherwise it's just simply too easy. And we don't want a situation with Chelsea with centre backs that are so used to playing a high line. And I think that's where West Ham could be a little bit dumbfounded if we sit here and say, well, they play a high line, we're just playing beyond. It doesn't quite work like that. Christensen's fantastic in reading the game. Rudiger is aggressive. Again, 1v1, very good and physical. Thiago Silva, was the player that I should have mentioned. Unbelievable positioning. That's the issue. So we can't, for me, rely on a 1v1 on every occasion. It has to be intelligent movement. There has to be movement off the ball, and there has to be composed build-up play to allow for that. And that's really where West Ham's route for a result comes from. There's no denying here that the positioning of the centre-backs and the defensive midfielders has to be tight. Absolutely. Protection from the wide attacking midfielders dealing with James and Alonso has to be absolutely spot on. And Fornals will play a huge role in that, and was impressed at least with his off-the-ball pressing against Brighton. And we're going to need him in that sense. Lanzini, a player in terms of build-up that can offer us something. I feel that the longer West Ham can keep our shape and keep our roles and keep the concentration. And these games are hard to watch because of what they are and because of how we'll relinquish possession. There will be chances. If, like I say, if Jorginho is pushed further forward, Ruben Loftus-Cheek will be the ball carrier in that midfield for Chelsea if he plays. If Jorginho loses the ball and Declan Rice seeks an opportunity, we know Declan has, and I don't know if anyone else, a lot of people probably agree because a lot of you watch West Ham, of course you do. You'll see him at times making explosive runs to go and try and win the ball and press intensely. That's where he could hurt Jorginho. And if he's in a very high position, and if Declan can win the ball, then and the game becomes more stretched for Chelsea, that's where opportunity is. But of course, that only works if West Ham commit bodies forward. That's always the case in this game. I just worry about Mickey. I worry about the fatigue that could happen. But at the same time, if there was a game for West Ham to get back into form, to get a point, to get something from, I feel that the players will be energized enough to go out there and put on a result. Again, and that's the kind of risk that you take a little bit with playing your strongest team in midweek, that you're not going to play a weaker team against Chelsea, in my opinion. I think Moyes has gone for playing the strongest team for 3 games and give them a complete rest for a week after Saturday. So it is going to be a tough game, absolutely. In terms of a score prediction, I'd probably go, I'm going to go 0-0, I hope. 0-0. Again, I think if West Ham are spot on, at least defensively, Chelsea have struggled a little bit in terms of fluency. And I think with West Ham sitting slightly deeper, we can try and nullify a lot of their creativity. If we can nullify the wide areas, that helps a whole heap. And maybe it can open up. I just worry about our transitions at the minute aren't effective enough and they're not clinical enough. Manu could change that if he plays, but we will absolutely see. So that's enough for me for now. Very long-winded, but I did want to, of course, do a preview before the Chelsea game tomorrow. There will be a post-match from me tomorrow evening, I imagine. And then, of course, all things West Ham on Sunday to discuss some of the key points and generally. And look, fingers crossed we've got a positive result. That would be the best thing going into the Zagreb game. Rest your players, play Dave Martin in goal, and then we move on. And then we've got some fixtures coming up that West Ham, if these players are fully fit for, we can definitely get a result and, again, build momentum. So take care. Enjoy the rest of your evening, your Friday. I'm sure a lot of you are going up to the game tomorrow. And fingers crossed we get a positive result.